hear from the teacher and union leader who called a student Hitler Youth. You'll hear my thoughts on the school board that silenced the criticism in just a moment. First, to that apology. This teacher falsely identified the student as being one of the Covington Catholic school students involved in the now infamous standoff in Washington. Those tweets calling the 17-year-old Hitler Youth. Mountain Ridge Middle School teacher Michelle Grissom emailed us an apology this afternoon addressed to the student's family. It reads, quote, "I would like to formally apologize for tweets I posted on Saturday naming your son Jay. I feel horrible about not having made a public apology sooner. I have not been able to make statements or comment on the matter, but I need for you to know how repentant I am about what happened." Grissom is on paid leave and has resigned her union leadership post. If it sounds like no one is defending her, you didn't see last night's Doug Coast school board meeting. The first person who tried to bring it up during public comment had his microphone turned off and was escorted out by law enforcement, while board members laughed and smiled. Our Nelson Garcia looks at Doug Coast School's interpretation of free speech.
When Aaron Johnson took the podium last night at the Douglas County School Board meeting.
Here we are, a community incensed by a teacher's social media posts.
He came wanting to talk about a middle school teacher named Michelle Grissom, who sent these tweets to a boy from Covington High School in Kentucky, calling him a part of Hitler Youth because she thought he was part of the confrontation with the Native American activist in Washington, D.C.
I can't imagine what drove a teacher to make comments online that were hateful and bigoted, slanderous and vilifying.
The problem is, at the beginning of the meeting, board president David Ray told the audience that using a person's name while making slanderous remarks is a violation of board policy.
Ms. Grisham violated most of the provisions in the policy.
Excuse me, President.
It's obviously weak, and in addition to item 14,
if I could interrupt you for just a second, we've been very explicit about no names being mentioned in our board meeting. So at this point, you are out of order.
But it may be the board who is out of order when it comes to free speech, according to 9 News legal analyst Whitney Traylor.
And the subject matter sounds completely protected speech for the school board or whomever to say, well, we're not going to allow you to say anything disparaging. First of all, who made the determination that it was disparaging?
The Douglas County School District put out a statement which reads in part, quote, "It is district policy not to hear in public session personal complaints against any district personnel. Board Policy KE provides a detailed process for members of our community to address their concerns."
If you would please escort Mr. Johnson away from the podium from my request.
Traylor would like to see that board policy challenged in court.
It's like, look, this is a constitutional protection, and it's a good thing to challenge that because that makes sure that authority and other figures are not violating our constitutional rights.
Traylor says the whole point of public comment is to hear from the public legitimate concerns, and that sometimes can involve individual employees of the district. He says these are interesting legal questions that could be answered in court if somebody files suit. Kyle?
We know that there have been lawsuits on this in other states. Wouldn't be the first lawsuit for Doug Coast Schools recently.
Douglas County has had their fair share of lawsuits that they've been fighting over the years.
All right, Nelson, thank you very much. That board confrontation in Douglas County does not sit well with me for a couple of reasons. I'd like to share why, and I'd like to hear if you agree or disagree. If the board is going to have a policy that silences criticism, it at least better exercise it uniformly. I only had to look back to the previous board meeting to witness a parent repeatedly violating the policy. She was given a polite reminder and then was allowed to just go on and violate the policy again. Her microphone was not turned off. She was not escorted away by law enforcement while board members laughed and smirked. So that sends a pretty clear message. Whether the Doug Coast School Board gives you a polite reminder and permission or a police escort out depends on who you are and who you're criticizing. And lastly, the school board president silenced that citizen last night by saying that his words were slanderous. Slanderous means false and harmful. Tell me what he said that was false. Denver Public Schools is dealing with a public relations crisis of its own making even before teachers walk out on strike. The district is apologizing for a letter threatening to report teachers on immigration visas to immigration officials if they went on strike. DPS apologized, but like all threats, the message had already been delivered loud and clear. When we talk about DPS teachers here legally on visas, it's about 130 employees. The district is offering profuse apologies and has promised that it will not report people to immigration. DPS says it's investigating how this happened. At this point, the only person DPS is blaming is a low-level HR staffer. Here's what Superintendent Susana Cordova told our Sonia Gutierrez.
Did this employee follow protocol as far as having anyone look over this email? Did anyone
This was a
look over
case where our normal procedures and protocols were not followed.
Did anyone look over this
That's correct.
particular? Okay, so she just sent it without going
correct.
over it with
That's
anyone.
correct.
The buck stops, it would appear, with a young HR staffer. Hey, speaking of bucks, dollars, and the superintendent's new contract that we told you about last night, the one that the school board pulled from its agenda after we asked about it. Today, Superintendent Cordova told us that she will delay finalizing her contract until the teacher strike is resolved. So a few minutes ago, I was just texted Governor Jared Polis's response to the immigration threat by DPS right about 6 o'clock. He says this letter would be inappropriate for any school district to scare its employees with. The governor continues, while I'm glad that DPS has apologized for this inappropriate letter, it should never have been sent in the first place. So there's the governor on the immigration threat. Denver Mayor Michael Hancock is red hot about it as well. He called it unconscionable. In a Facebook post, the mayor also said, even if this was a mistake, it is, quote, completely contrary to our values in Denver. The mayor says he has assurances from DPS that they will take what he called corrective action. Mayor Hancock has not said publicly whether he wants Governor Polis to weigh in on the side of the school district and stop this strike. And it could be 2 more weeks before we know if teachers actually go on the picket line. The union does not expect to formalize its opposition to state intervention until Monday. When they send in that letter, that starts a 2-week clock for the Polis administration to decide what to do. Though I hear from the state labor department that they are going to try to do it faster than 14 days. If the teachers who protested outside last night's school board meeting end up on the picket lines, they are going to have colleagues, fellow DPS employees, who will be forced to cross those picket lines, even if those other employees are ethically opposed to being strikebreakers. DPS told us today that their job is to put students first, to have adults in those classrooms, so they do not allow conscience clauses or permission for employees who are outside the teachers union to decline to cross those picket lines. We have heard from you at home during the government shutdown about some unseen aspects of the shutdown, on government employees' mental health, on the devastating impacts in Indian country. Even though the shutdown as of today is at least temporarily over, we know it could start again, and it certainly has had effects over the last few weeks. We heard some of those perspectives again today as Democratic Congresswoman Diana DeGette met with some furloughed federal workers in her office.
I've seen a huge increase in depression. There's certain people, because our chapter really does reach out, we try and help the employees as best as we can. In one instance, there's a woman that basically has just been in bed like for 22 hours a day. And this is not an exaggeration.
If they're not able to access services at our clinic, they may end up in the ER, or worse, they'll let their conditions deteriorate. It is really becoming a crisis in Indian country.
Tell you what, you could not pay me enough to deal with the stress of being an air traffic controller for the federal government. And if you paid me nothing for it, nah, son, I'm out. But the Denver Air Traffic Control Center in Longmont has been staffed for the last 35 days during the shutdown, filled with people like Joshua Wegener, who went to work with or without a paycheck.
It's kind of a different thing every day. It's definitely not your normal 9-to-5 desk job. You either feed off the stress or the stress feeds on you. My name is Josh Wagoner. I'm an air traffic controller, and I'm a facility representative for Denver Air Traffic Control Center here in Longmont. With this shutdown, I mean, we're looking at missing our second paycheck now, and I know that the Senate just voted down both bills to reopen the government, so here we sit. There's all these layers of redundancy that contribute to the safety that are all gone. So right now there's one layer and we're it. Airplanes get spaced out more, airplanes take more delays on the ground, in the air, and that's not anything that anybody wants to see. We'll be safe, but they're just gonna have to reduce the amount of airplanes that are in the sky due to the staffing and, you know, the safety layers that aren't there. The stress is mounting and you can see it. at work. When you talk about air traffic control, you know, we have to be 100% of the time. And if people are working a second job on their off time, they're already coming to work fatigued. They're not getting sleep because they're working, because they're stressed about paying the bills.
How many kids do you have?
2. They'll ask for something, and we just say, that's just gonna have to wait until Dad gets another paycheck, because we're just not sure when that's gonna happen. We don't care about red versus blue, R versus D. We just care about opening the government back up and getting paychecks and getting back to, you know, the job and the level of safety and the level of support that we normally have.
You heard Joshua mention those failed Senate bills. We obviously had that conversation with him prior to this morning's deal to reopen the government temporarily. Joshua encouraged us all to remember that nationwide staffing for air traffic control centers was at a 30-year low before the shutdown. RTD is building new commuter rail line up north with no guarantee that it can find workers to run it. And we have proof that Coloradans have been crossing lines for ages at the stock show. That's next.
Happy Friday. The weekend is here and it looks pretty good. Mid-40s on tap for us tomorrow. Mostly sunny skies, and Sunday even warmer, close to 60 degrees. Now the warmer temperatures coming at a cost with some stronger winds on Sunday. Otherwise, we're good to go. You'll notice on HD Doppler 9 up in the high country, they're starting to see a little bit of light snowfall. We do have a storm system that will be pushing in the northern and central mountains, but around town, look for mostly cloudy skies this evening. Temperatures tonight dropping to about 18 here in the city. Teens and 20s for eastern Colorado, but look at that, sub-zero in Alamosa, Lake City, and through Gunnison. This next storm system should bring the high country some good snowfall. 4 to 9 inches coming through the park, the Elkhead Mountains, the Flat Tops too, and a bit more in southern Wyoming. Snow really gets going late tonight. By early tomorrow morning, most of it already on the ground. Great news for skiers and snowboarders. It looks like fresh powder conditions once again as we head toward the weekend. Sunny skies here in eastern Colorado tomorrow with still a bit unsettled weather going up in the mountains. Tomorrow, as I mentioned, a nice one at 46. We'll stay in the 40s in eastern Colorado with 20s and 30s up in the mountains. Oh, it's all fun and games for the weekend, and then here comes that next storm system. 1 to 3 inches, what it looks like now. It comes during the early morning drive, so that could be a bit tricky, and then we stay cool for most of next week. Kyle?
Things get real on Monday, as they always do. Thank you, Danielle. Hey, you know which RTD commuter rail line we never mention? The N line north to Thornton, under construction. We'll see if it actually opens, right? But hey, even then, RTD's going to have trouble finding people to work on it. Here's Marshall Zellinger.
Stop. This is not your typical commuter rail story. This one is about the N line, which you might not know about. It will go from Union Station through Commerce City into Thornton, and RTD plans to run it and not contract it out to the group that runs the other lines.
Does that mean you don't have complete confidence in DTP to run another line?
No, it has nothing to do with Denver Transit Partners and where we are with them on the concession agreement. It was mainly a decision that was financially based.
RTD General Manager Dave Genova believes RTD can operate the future N line at a lower cost than if they hired DTP, which, by the way, is suing RTD for $80 million over delays on the A line. The head of DTP told me in an email, "We recognize that our current litigation with RTD makes it unlikely that RTD would feel comfortable selecting us from a public perception perspective."
How can you take on something new when we've reported that you're struggling to maintain what you have?
Last May, we reported on RTD's bus driver shortage.
We are currently down close to 100 bus operators.
Today, they're still short 109 bus drivers, and we found out 22 light rail operators are needed. And when the N line starts, that means 28 new conductors.
You're not worried about filling all those jobs?
Well, we're going to be creating more jobs, more opportunities. It's going to be challenging to fill them all, but I'm confident we'll get to where we need to be to make things run and make things work.
I didn't forget to ask about quiet zones for those of you along the A and G lines. Genova said he got positive feedback when he went to D.C. last week to meet with federal regulators.
By summertime, by spring, can you say anything like that?
You know, I'd love to say a date. I feel that it's going to be soon. I know that's not real meaningful, especially to people that live close by. I don't want to create an expectation one way or another.
I checked with Denver Transit Partners, which run the other commuter lines. They have 62 operators, and that gives them a full schedule. So, Kyle, RTD and DTP will likely have to start competing for the same talent pool when the N line needs commuter or rail drivers.
And as we saw on the A line, they don't always get along so well. So I'm sure it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Yes, I love it. Yes. All right. Thank you. So just got word in from Lakewood Police. Want to relay this to you. There's been an incident on westbound 6 out near Sims where a state trooper was hit tonight. We know that the injuries were significant enough that trooper had to go to the hospital. We don't have more information than that. So again, CSP trooper who was hit on 6th just west of Sims. We'll gather some more information, and it comes to us by the bottom of the hour. You'll hear it here when next continues. You guys sure have a sharp eye for bad parking, and apparently this has been going on for decades. William was watching this program last week, saw this old photo in our story about the Livestock Exchange building. That's the old building that they're not going to knock down when they redo the National Western Complex. And William's like, look at the people crossing lines there. You got 3 cars stacked on top of each other right there. Who can tell me the era? I'm bad at this stuff. Based on those automobiles, when do you think that was? Shoot me a note. Hey, it's a sign that obvious hazards are not obvious to every single person. Because why else would you need both a sign and metal spikes to discourage people from sitting on this fence in Telluride? One way or the other, you are going to get the message, either through your eyes or your thank you for the photo, Susan. If you see a sign that makes you smile, email pictures to next@9news.com, or you can always give me a shout with the hashtag HeyNext. We always end your work week with good news and some bad news for me that came from above. Next. All right, how you feeling this Friday? You worn down from the week? Energized for the weekend? I'm fired up. I think it was that Doug Coe school board story. Anyway, no matter how you are feeling, we always give you a boost as our parting gift each Friday with a simple question for our neighbors. What's your good news? Our photojournalist Corky Scholl took his camera and the question to a stock show event at the Brown Palace.
It is the most wonderful news I've had all day. It's early, but it's wonderful news.
And we're so excited to welcome back the championship steer and the reserve steer today.
Well, I won grand champion at the steer show, so that's pretty good news for me.
This is a good part of our good news. We have never done it before.
Well, my goal coming in here was to hopefully get champion, but it's okay because a good friend of mine got champion and we get to share the experience together.
This is as good as you can get. This is the very top of the hill.
I think it's wonderful to be able to see an animal. You know, I come from San Diego originally, and we just eat animals. We don't see animals. So this is a wonderful experience to talk with the people that actually raise them.
There have been a couple people that are like bull or cow.
That I haven't been face to face with a bull before, or is it whatever it is?
You know, I don't mean to correct them, but like if they ask, yeah, he's a steer.
Steer, that'll do.
He's not a bull, no.
The Brown Palace is beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. The night we got married, we spent here at the Brown Palace, so I still got the receipts and the things from when we were here many years ago.
I've never seen this place before, and it's absolutely beautiful, and it's a day that I will never forget.
First and foremost, want to tell you that CSP trooper hit on US 6 near Sims. He was in his vehicle, minor injuries. He's going to be fine. As for the old cars outside the stock show, Dustin thinks they were from the early 30s. Nick is pretty sure they're from the early 20s. The debate continues. But no one is arguing with Father Michael Nicosia, who writes in on Twitter to me and says, "Unbutton the jacket. Not flattering." Forgive me, Father. We'll see you next time.